What's going on, guys? Today we have an awesome car here. It is a 1965 Pontiac GTO, and in this video we're going to be doing a power steering conversion on it. I want to start by saying that the car looks absolutely awesome. So first of all, I'm going to take you around and just kind of show you the car. It's literally flawless. All right, so we're working in kind of a cramped space, so I'll make sure to include some shots outside. But this thing is beautifully done. Krager wheels, awesome bodywork. The restoration was done by Riley Customs, and just an incredible job. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting down there to the gearbox, swapping that out, and that's a pretty straightforward process there. There's just a couple bolts, and then there's some bolts that go in from the side, like through the frame rail. So you're going to get all that stuff off of there, and then underneath the car right here, there's a nut that holds the pitman arm on. You're just going to take that off, and then we'll separate it, and then that's pretty much it for getting the gearbox out of there. All right, so I'm going to get prepped up here. We're going to lay some stuff across the fenders just to protect the body from any scratches or anything, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so for the first part, we're working right here. It's on the steering shaft, and there's a bolt and a nut on each side. There's two of them, I believe, that you have to get off of there. So basically you'll have somebody, or you can just do it yourself, get inside the car, turn the steering wheel just a little bit to expose one of the ones up on the top. That way it's just easier. It looks like you can access them from the bottom as well, but it's just so much easier to do it from the top. So you get both of those bolts out of there, and then you'll be able to move forward onto the actual mounting bolts for the steering box. All right, guys, so the old steering box is right there, got it out. And basically there were the three bolts that went from the through the frame rail there, and then you just have to get those up underneath the wheel arch. Those are super easy to pop out. And then the two bolts on that flange, which now you can kind of see how that flange works. So got that loosened up, and I've got the pitman arm also on this assembly because we have a new pitman arm to use. So I'm going to go over and take a look at the kit and see what we have to use to get all this stuff mocked up in here, and then we can go on with the accessory drive and mounting the pump. All right, so we've got our new steering gearbox right here, and then we have our new coupler, which is right here. And if you flip the coupler over, you're going to see that there's a little space here, and that's where you're going to spread to get this to drop over the splines on your new steering gearbox. So basically, the easiest way to do this is to throw it in the vise over here, and you don't have to cinch it down at all. Just kind of loosely put it in there so you have something to pry against. Once you've got that situated, you're just going to gently pry the tab open. Again, it doesn't take much pressure at all. You're just wanting to barely spread that open. And then you'll take it over here and make sure that it's going to slide over top of the splines. So if you've done it correctly, it should go right over. Yep, just like that. So you're going to fill this seat all the way, and that's what you want. Once you've got that seated to where it's bottoming out, and you can look at it and see that it's all the way as far as you can get it, then you're going to run your bolt down in there, and that's going to be what's going to snug that all up. All right, so we're just running this little retaining bolt down just enough to where we still have a little bit of play in it, because just for getting it mounted in the car, the more play the better, just so you can kind of get things lined up and know that you're in the perfect spot. And another thing that I'll do, since I'm right here, is I will kind of spin it a number of ways, all the way as far as it will let me. And then I'll go back the opposite way. And then I'll count how many turns that I've done. So basically running that all the way to the left and then all the way to the right and counting the amount of turns that you get. So like 3 1/4. So basically what you want to do is divide that in half and kind of put yourself right in the middle. I think that this is a quick ratio. So basically you want to be right in the middle of that. That way if you set your steering wheel directly straight on and then you link everything together, then you know that your steering wheel is going to be somewhat lined up. The kit also comes with the new hardware to adapt the coupler to the actual steering shaft. So just kind of put that on there just so we don't lose it. And we're probably pretty close to mounting that in there. All right, so now that I've gotten the new steering box put on there, the pitman arm, I've got that put on, so now it's all tied into the steering. So now the only thing to do is just set up all of our bracketry. So On this current setup, it's got one of these lower mounting alternator brackets, so that's designed to sit like right in here somewhere. We're going to be swapping that out for a shorter one so it'll sit higher, and then it'll utilize this tab right here on the kit. The big thing now is just figuring out exactly where that pump is going to sit at and how all this bracketry works. I've got some pictures pulled up, so I'm going to kind of go over those as I get all this bracketry put together. All right, so I figured out all the bracketry and how it's supposed to go in there, and everything is looking like it's right where it needs to be. One of the belts was slightly off, so I had to order a longer belt, and we ended up using the belt that was supposed to be for the alternator on the power steering pump, because that's a perfect size. And then the belt that they sent with it was like way too big for anything. So we ended up having to order a different belt, but that'll be here anytime. So we'll just pop off these little plugs and we'll get our plumbing figured out. All right, guys, so we've got the power steering pump here. And to install the pulley onto it, it's like a press fit. So it's got a keyway in it down here. So you got to make sure that your keyway is lined up with the notch in the pulley. And then what I like to do is just make sure I'm lined up and feel it before you start going and driving on this. But feel it, make sure that it's seated all the way, and look on the bottom side to make sure that the keyway is lined up. And then I just put an oversized socket on there. And then you just kind of gently tap on it to get it to start. And then once threads are exposed enough to put a nut on there, you can just zip it down the rest of the way with a nut. All right, the plumbing's all hooked up. It's ready to go. Well, except for this line here. This is your return line. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to disable your ignition. You can take like the positive off of the coil or anything. There's multiple ways to do it, but that's probably the easiest. And basically you're going to have this line that goes back to the pump, and you're just going to run it down underneath the vehicle to a bucket, and you're going to fill your reservoir up, and then kind of just doing it in increments. You're going to crank the engine over, and then you want clean fluid running through all the way to the bottom. And once you see that, then you can stop, reconnect your return line, and then it's time to go on and do the bleeding process. And the bleeding process is pretty much going to be the same kind of thing. You can leave the ignition off, or if you're like real good and you've got two people that really know what they're doing and have experience, then you could definitely hook the ignition back up and just run it. I've done that before. Basically, you want to go lock to lock, turning the steering wheel all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and just have somebody kind of monitor the fluid level here. So if you do it this route, basically you're just going to crank the ignition, and while you're cranking, just kind of turn the wheel slowly all the way to the right, all the way to the left, you know, wax on, wax off kind of stuff. And then you're going to look through that reservoir cap, and if you see any kind of like foam or bubbles, then you're going to stop, let all that stuff settle, and then just keep repeating that process. Add fluid if you need it, obviously, but you continue the process until you don't see any more bubbles or anything inside the reservoir. And then you have a properly flushed and a properly bled system. It took me like 5 times to say that. All right, guys, so that was a nice, smooth, and easy install, other than obviously getting the wrong size belt, but that was a really easy fix. So really smooth and simple process. If you aren't getting fluid circulating through the pump just by cranking it with the ignition disabled, then just go ahead and hook the ignition back up. And whenever you crank and turn on the car, you'll immediately see it sucking down fluid. So it just kind of depends on, you know, what kind of pump you have, but there's 2 ways to do it. Mine didn't really care for the whole like ignition disabled part. So as soon as I hooked everything back up, started it back up, the customer's car, I mean, it just instantly started drinking the power steering fluid, and thankfully, no leaks, everything's smooth. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions or anything, make sure you leave me some comments down in the description. I'll help you as best as I possibly can. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you guys in the next video.